Before we start talking about the lens, let's take a quick look at some photo examples. If you like the music in this video, it's all from audio and you can save 70% on a membership with the link in the description. So this is the Yongnuo 11mm 1.8 lens for the Sony APSC line of cameras. I'm using it on a Sony A6700, but obviously this lens is still relevant if you've got an FX30, an A6400, a ZV-E10, any APS-C Sony camera with an E-mount. So as you can see from the video already, I don't like to get mega technical with lens reviews. I'd much rather take them out and actually use them in a real world scenario and then show that to you guys. With that being said, I will quickly brush over some of the key points and the main features. For starters, the price. It's currently $298 or pounds, which is about 250 quid cheaper than the Sony 11mm 1.8 lens, which is a fair old chunk. Unfortunately, I don't have the Sony 11mm lens to compare this to. I know there's a few other videos like that online, which I'm sure you can go and find. And from what I'm seeing, it's generally, it's a bit softer in the corners than the Sony is, but I think sort of central sharpness and all-round performance, it's not that far off the mark. It's also a pretty fast lens at f1.8, so it's going to be pretty good in low light. All the footage and the photos I shot with it were all taken in sort of golden hour, blue hour kind of time, and I think it did a pretty good job. The autofocus seemed to do a really good job of locking onto subjects and staying locked on. It weighs 260 grams and it certainly doesn't have a cheap feel to it. It's got a minimum focusing distance of 15 centimeters. There's a few buttons and switches on the actual lens itself that you can assign custom functions to, as well as an option to have the aperture ring either click or spin smoothly. It also comes with a little separate remote control, which you can use for remotely controlling your focus and aperture. Now, in all honesty, I can't see myself using this that much, I'm just going to be using the controls on the camera, the autofocus built into the camera. I'll be flicking between manual focus and autofocus if I need to. I wouldn't really be changing my aperture during filming. I usually would just set it to an aperture and continue filming at that aperture. But one handy little feature that it does have is that you can set A and B points for focus racking, which I guess that is a little bit more handy. So, it's sort of up to you, sort of how much you think that might come into use for you. So what are my thoughts on this lens? Well, let's start with the not so good. It's got the obvious flaws, as most ultra-wide lenses do, that it's going to suffer with vignetting and distortion, most of which can be cleared up in post. I did notice that Lightroom doesn't yet recognise this lens, which is hopefully something that will be addressed in an upcoming update. But I found that hopping over into manual adjustments and cranking up the vignetting did a really good job of clearing things up. A quick side note, Yongnuo did send me a firmware update for this lens, but unfortunately I'd already filmed and shot all of that footage and photos, so I'll try and keep you guys posted on how that works out in the comments. And before you say it, I do realise that this is not the best lens to be using for portraits. If you get right up in someone's grill, it's going to look pretty unflattering. Unless, of course, you're going for kind of a creative, unsettling look. But if you step back a little bit and make sure your subject's in the frame, I think you can actually get some really good environmental portraits. So what about the good points of this lens? And full disclosure here, Yongnuo did send me the lens, but only because I asked them to. The reason being, and bear with me, this is relevant, I've just watched the Longlegs movie, which if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. It's, I really enjoyed it. But almost every shot in that is taken on a wide angle lens. And it kind of got me thinking, well, I think I need a wide angle lens, an ultra wide. So I was going to go out and buy this lens anyway. It was only the fact that I reached out to Yongnuo and said, could you send me one? I'll do a little review for you. And they sent me one out very kindly. So just bear that in mind that I would have bought this lens anyway. So in my personal case, I knew that I really wanted an ultra wide lens to get that cool ultra wide looking effect in some shots that I knew I could be using in music videos, short films, that kind of stuff. But I also knew that I wouldn't have the lens like glued to my camera camera. You know, it's not something that I'm going to have on there all the time, which is why I was a little bit against spending that much money on the Sony. And I think the quality coming out of this lens is plenty good enough. You know, I'm not that bothered if it's a little bit softer in the corners than the Sony. The other obvious use for this lens is obviously going to be vlogging, which is something that I don't do, but it's going to be great for that if you've got a Sony APS-C camera. Like I said a moment ago, especially if you're using an f1.8, you're going to have a little bit of separation from the background anyway. So again, if the corners are a little bit softer, it doesn't really matter. Don't sweat it, you know. No one's really going to notice. It's also going to be really good for property videos, landscapes, and astrophotography. So, final thoughts. I guess if you're looking for perfect edge-to-edge sharpness, then you're going to have to dig a little bit deeper in your pockets and go and get the Sony. If, however, you're not going to be pixel peeping too much and you just want a fun wide-angle lens to go and shoot with, then this has to be one of the best price/quality options out there on the market. So there we go. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, buy my presets. All that stuff really helps support the channel. And I'll see you again in the next one. Cheers.